So the war between Iran, the U.S., and Israel is in its third week now. And if you've been to the gas station recently and seen the prices, you can probably guess what I'm going to say next. Energy infrastructure across the Gulf, where a huge portion of the world's oil supply is produced, is being pulled into the conflict. Now, for the first time, Tehran is openly threatening energy facilities in neighboring countries. Iran has told civilians to evacuate 3 major ports in the United Arab Emirates, where it claims U.S. forces are sheltering. According to Tehran, they're legitimate targets because of the U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iran. This is Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates, where an Iranian drone strike caused a fire at a key oil terminal. The strike came just hours after U.S. forces attacked Iran's Karg Island oil hub. And to give you an idea of the scale of the attacks the region's energy infrastructure is facing, let's take a look at a map of the Persian Gulf. As you can see here, there have been strikes on oil facilities across the region, from Kuwait to Oman, and Iran has started placing sea lines in the Strait of Hormuz, blocking a vital choke point for energy supplies. It's estimated that around 25% of the world's liquefied natural gas and 25% of the world's seaborne oil supplies pass through the strait each year. And we're now joined by Rosemary Kelanic. She's director of the Middle East program at Defense Priorities and has written extensively on energy security and U.S. strategy in the Middle East. Rosemary, thanks for joining us to help break this down.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with Iran. What exactly is Tehran hoping to achieve by attacking oil production facilities?
The Iran strategy here is very clear. This is bogged down into an attrition war between the United States and Iran. And Iran is playing the role of a porcupine, trying to defend itself from a bear. Of course, a porcupine can't defend itself from a bear, the United States being the bear. But what it can do is it can cause the bear pain. And it can cause enough pain that hopefully the bear will let go of the porcupine. And that's what Iran's doing here. They're attacking oil infrastructure throughout the region. They have threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz and effectively have done so because transit won't go through it. And the idea is that by doing that, they're ratcheting up the costs to the United States and the whole world of this war continuing in hopes that the United States will decide to stop.
So by making the war more expensive, are they hoping that the U.S. and Israel's allies start ramping up the pressure to end the war? Or are they actually looking at like the midterms in the U.S. this year and hoping that pain at the pump might turn American voters off from continuing this campaign?
All the above. Allies are important somewhat to the United States, but, President Trump is a go-it-alone kind of person. So I'd expect that mostly it's directed at the United States specifically and at support for the war at home. Plus, there's just an assumption, I think, that's widely believed by many, even before Trump came into office, that the United States is casualty averse, that it's cost averse. And certainly Trump has not been shy about his preference that military campaigns be quick, decisive, and not very costly. So I think this is aimed primarily at the United States, at American voters, and at Trump himself.
Now, the threat of war with Iran is nothing new. It's probably been war gamed since the revolution happened. Was the world ready for the Gulf's energy infrastructure to be targeted in this way?
Yes and no. So this is a contingency that the U.S. military has prepared for literally for decades. And the difficulty in trying to keep the strait open was something that we know was communicated to the president. Nevertheless, he did decide to start the war. And the speculation is that Trump didn't believe that the war would last very long and that it wouldn't be tested. We wouldn't be testing whether Iran would actually close the strait, because after a decapitation strike on the capital that took out its leadership, Iran would stop fighting. So unfortunately, the world does not seem to be very well prepared for this, even though many people saw it coming.
Now, does that indicate that there was a lack of preparation by the United States, or was it purely a question of misinterpreting the danger that Iran posed?
I think it was a miscalculation. I think it was a miscalculation of how willing Iran was to really retaliate broadly across the region and to retaliate in the strait. President Trump had these very spectacular, very quick military successes in Venezuela earlier this year, and quick success in his sort of saying of it in the 12-day war in June. And so I really think that they just did not plan for a longer war. They attacked on a Friday night. and thought that the war would be done before the market opened on Monday. And there just was not contingency planning in a follow through or follow up kind of way after that, which, was not, it was a reckless move on the president's part.
Now, Trump has indicated that bringing oil prices down is something that's important to Washington at the moment. But at the same time, we've also seen the U.S. go after military targets on Iran's Karg Island. And if I'm right, it's responsible for around 90% of Iran's oil exports. So what exactly is the logic behind those U.S. attacks?
Yeah, so Trump, made a point of saying that the United States did not actually strike any oil infrastructure on Karg, but that by attacking military targets, he's trying to show that the U.S. can attack oil infrastructure on Karg and is, threatening to do that quite explicitly if Iran doesn't let oil go through the Strait of Hormuz. What Trump is doing there is that he's trying to increase the cost to Iran of continuing the conflict, thinking that if the United States stops Iran's ability to export oil through Karg, that Iran's ability to fund the war will decrease because they can't sell their oil. And it will also be more painful for Iran because they'll be unable to sell their oil if they can't, export it through Karg. He's trying to use it as a form of leverage to get Iran to back down. But I think it would be surprising if Iran did back down for that reason.
Now, we have Iran trying to increase the costs for the U.S. of waging war. At the same time, the U.S. is trying to drive up the cost for Iran. But the larger question is, what type of risks does this conflict pose for global energy markets in the short term?
Well, in the short term, we're already seeing the risk unfolding in real time, which is that energy prices are going up, and specifically oil prices are going up. Natural gas prices are going up because it's oil and natural gas specifically that's being disrupted. And that can have all kinds of follow-on effects. So oil price shocks, especially when it's a supply shock like this, they are associated with economic recessions. We could see an economic recession if oil prices go up and stay up for a long period of time. So that is a real problem. In the long run, I do think that this will change consumers' behavior. Other times that we've had massive oil shocks, like in 1973, as a result, in the years following that, the world decreased its reliance on oil and fossil fuels. It became much more energy efficient as a result. So if there's a silver lining here, it could be that in the span of a few years or 5 years or a decade from now, this will help hasten the transition away from oil and away from fossil fuels and towards more green, sustainable energy.
All right. Now, that's actually an interesting point. You mentioned the energy crisis in the 1970s, and some commentators here in Germany have speculated that if the conflict were to continue, we could see a similar energy crisis. Do you agree with that fears, or with those fears, rather?
It's certainly possible. Nobody knows at this point. And the big reason why, oil has been disrupted is because tankers are not willing to try their luck through the strait. They're not willing to go through the strait without some kind of military escort. The United States has been somewhat coy about this. They've said that they'll help ships in the strait, but then they haven't. Militarily, it's a very difficult problem. If you try to protect shipping through the strait, it would put a lot of American military assets in harm's way, and you could see major casualties as a result of that. That said, in past conflicts in the Gulf, during the Iran-Iraq War, for instance, neutral shipping was attacked, yet shippers kept shipping oil out of the Persian Gulf and out of the Strait of Hormuz, and the market simply adapted. The price went up. Insurers pooled risk in a different way at higher rates of insurance. It's possible that that could happen now. It certainly doesn't look very good for that outcome. And, in an age where we can all see images of oil tankers burning on our social media, it does seem that, the capacity or the willingness to accept risk in the market might be lower than it was in the 1980s. Markets can really adjust, though, so we'll just have to see. Certainly the drawdown of oil from Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the United States and by other G7 countries will help cushion the market somewhat going forward.
And given that there is that strategic drawdown and we have seen some cushioning or bolstering of the market to a certain extent, do you anticipate more attacks on the Gulf's energy infrastructure if this conflict continues in the coming weeks? Hegseth has been saying it could go on as long as 3 or 4 more weeks.
do. I do. This is Iran's main way of responding to the U.S. and Israeli attack. I mean, Iran is a weak country compared to the U.S. and Israel. It can't defend its airspace from U.S. and Israeli attack. The only thing it can do is ratchet up the cost to everybody else and to the United States and Israel. And so that's what they're doing. And I expect they will continue to do that because from Iran's perspective, this is an asymmetric conflict. And in an asymmetric conflict, for the United States, the stakes here, the objectives, why the U.S. did this, it's not even entirely clear what they were, right? But for Iran, they're fighting for their continued sovereignty as a country. They're defending their country. Their stakes, the stakes for them, what they care about here is just extremely strong. And so they care about this more. So it's unlikely that they're going to be the ones that blink first or that flinch first compared to the United States. But we just have to see how it plays out.
All right, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. That was Rosemary Kelanic, Director of the Middle East Program at Defense Priorities. Thank you for joining us and helping us break down this complex issue.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to Rosemary Kelanic for answering our questions. And of course, we'd love a chance to answer yours too. Please write us in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more of this, please do hit the like and subscribe button to the DW News channel.